Imagine learning that the individual who caused you the deepest pain hasn't forgotten a single moment of their actions toward you. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, once stated, "What we find bothersome in others can guide us to insights about our own nature, yet there's a hidden layer to this wisdom that Jung left unspoken. And what I'm about to unveil will append every belief you've held about those who refuse to admit their faults. By the time we're done, you'll grasp why some can rest easy at night while you lie awake, endlessly revisiting every word, every instance, every flicker of anguish in your expression when they let you down." Let me begin with a chilling reality. They haven't forgotten a thing. The person who broke your trust, who left you doubting your own perception, who made you feel as though your sanity was slipping. They recall every detail with stark clarity, every cutting remark they uttered, every vow they shattered, every second they saw you collapse under the weight of their disloyalty. They remember it all. Drawing from Carl Jung's pioneering concept of the shadow self, we all harbor aspects of ourselves we'd rather keep hidden. Through years of clinical practice, Jung found that the more we try to bury these unsettling truths, the greater their influence over us becomes. But here's where it takes a darker turn. Those who've wounded you aren't plagued by amnesia. They're engaged in something far more deliberate, what Jung termed shadow projection, and unconscious maneuver, where they offload their own inner darkness onto you, forcing you to bear its burden. But hold on, there's an even more unsettling facet to this behavior. If you've ever wondered why certain people can dismantle your sense of calm and then carry on as if nothing happened, what I'm about to share will reshape your understanding of human behavior. Jung wrote, "When two personalities meet, it's akin to two chemicals interacting. If a reaction occurs, both are altered. But what happens when one party refuses to change, opting instead for ease over awareness, denial over growth? They don't simply forget, they choose to forget. Because recalling their actions would demand something most aren't ready to face: true accountability." Jung's extensive work with patients revealed that accountability requires the most daunting task of all genuine transformation. In his private correspondence, he noted, "The greatest fear is to fully embrace one's true self. Those who've hurt you have built their entire sense of identity around dodging this fear, erecting intricate mental barriers to avoid the very thing that could liberate them. What do these individuals cling to instead? Comfort, self-preservation, and denial, neatly packaged in phrases like, 'That's not how I recall it,' or 'You're overreacting.'" Through decades of psychological study, Jung uncovered that the human mind will go to extraordinary lengths to safeguard itself. He called this defense the persona, a facade we adopt to conceal our authentic selves, not just from others, but from our own consciousness. Jung's clinical findings suggest that when someone harms you and then behaves as if it never occurred, they're not merely deceiving you, they're upholding what he dubbed the provisional life, a mental state where they sidestep the profound work of becoming their true selves by remaining perpetually comfortable, always justified, forever blameless. Now, here's where it gets truly convoluted, and this revelation will make you rethink every encounter with someone who refuses to own their wrongs. Jung observed, "What you resist persists." But he also uncovered something more troubling. Some individuals have perfected the art of making their resistance appear as your flaw. When someone wounds you and then acts as though nothing happened, they're not only shielding themselves, they're actively undermining your stability. They make you question your recollection, your emotions, your entire sense of reality. Thoughts like, "Maybe it wasn't that bad. Perhaps I overreacted, or am I being too dramatic?" creep in. Pause here. Jung's extensive research on psychological manipulation shows this is precisely what happens when someone's shadow self effaces accountability. Instead of remorse, they deflect. Instead of owning their actions, they shift the blame. Instead of mending the hurt, they make you doubt whether you're even injured. Jung labeled this psychological projection, but it's more than that. It's what we now recognize as gaslighting, a tactic to erode your trust in your own reality to preserve their self-perception. Jung uncovered a profound truth about human nature. The greatest privilege in life is to become who you truly are. Yet, some have found an even more potent privilege, the ability to avoid becoming anything at all, by mastering strategic silence. Their silence isn't accidental, passive, or even truly silent. It's a calculated tool. Let me explain why. This tactic leaves you feeling unmoored, confused, and yearning for closure that never arrives, while they seem to grow stronger as you weaken. When someone harms you and then retreats into silence, that absence isn't void, it's power. Jung's writings on relational dynamics highlight a critical insight. Silence transfers the weight of confusion onto the person already suffering. Consider this. When they offer no response, you fill the void replaying conversations, overanalyzing your emotions, questioning your reactions, hoping for a reply that never comes, scrutinizing every word, gesture, and moment for signs of regret that aren't there. This isn't happenstance, it's their entire strategy. Jung wrote, "Clarity comes from looking within your heart. Those who look outward dream, those who look inward awaken." But these individuals have built their identity on looking outward. projecting their shadow onto you, making you carry their unresolved guilt while they walk away unscathed. Research into what he called unconscious competence reveals that some people become adept at emotional manipulation without ever consciously intending to. They develop an instinctive knack for shifting emotional labor onto others while shielding themselves from consequences. But here's what's truly staggering about those who wield silence as a weapon. Drawn from Jung's most provocative work, silence, when used deliberately, fosters what he termed psychological dependency. The more they withhold the acknowledgement you crave, the more desperate you become for any sign of recognition. This desperation serves their purposes perfectly. It keeps you chasing, softening your boundaries, retreating from your truth just to elicit a response. It makes you grateful for mere crumbs of attention from someone who should be seeking your forgiveness. Jung wrote, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." But those who weaponize silence have discovered something more potent. They can make you fear exploring your own cave of self-worth by keeping you fixated on their empty cave of non-response. Through his groundbreaking work on the collective unconscious, Jung identified shared archetypal patterns. One of the most destructive being the innocent archetype, the part of the psyche that refuses to acknowledge its potential for harm. Disturbingly, some don't just tap into this archetype, occasionally they inhabit it permanently, making innocence their entire identity, rendering them incapable of ever being wrong. Jung's analysis of his most challenging patients reveals a shocking truth about accountability: those who consistently evade responsibility have developed an unconscious mastery of emotional manipulation. They don't randomly hurt others and forget they've honed the skill of causing pain while insulating themselves from repercussions. Jung's clinical notes describe this as psychological inflation, where the ego becomes so inflated it rejects any information that challenges itself. When you seek accountability from someone in this state, you're not just asking for an apology or asking them to dismantle their entire sense of self, which is why they can't comply. When conflict arises, emotions surface, or accountability is demanded, notice their response. They disappear, go silent, shift the topic, post cheerful updates online, or surround themselves with people who affirm their narrative. This isn't overwhelm, it's a deliberate pattern. Not confusion, but strategy, Jung wrote, until the unconscious is made conscious. It will steer your life, and you'll call it fate. These individuals haven't confronted their destructive patterns. Instead, they've made them systematic, predictable, and devastatingly effective. But there's an even darker layer to their behavior, revealed through Jung's work on complex psychology. He studied psychological complexes, autonomous clusters of thoughts, feelings, and memories that function independently of conscious control. Yet Jung found something deeper. Those who habitually avoid accountability have developed what he called dissociative competence. They can so thoroughly separate their actions from their identity that they genuinely believe they're not responsible for the harm they've caused. It's not that they don't recall hurting you, they've convinced themselves they had no choice, that you provoked them, that they were the true victim. Their psychological defenses are so sophisticated, they can rewrite history in real time, casting themselves as the hero in stories where they were the antagonist. Jung warned, the greatest danger is living in a world of projections. These individuals don't just exist in such a world, they've constructed an entire reality where they're always right, always justified, always misunderstood. Jung declared, the ultimate privilege is to become who you truly are. But true emotional maturity demands something many are unwilling to offer: the courage to confront their capacity for harm. This explains why you keep getting hurt by those who can't process guilt. Jung's research on shadow integration reveals a startling truth. Guilt, when handled healthily, serves as a compass, signaling, I've hurt someone I value, and I must make amends. Jung called this the moral function of the unconscious, driving us toward balance, justice, and repair. But those lacking emotional maturity perceive guilt, not as guidance, but as an assault, a threat to their very existence. Jung's work with patients showed that these individuals never learned to separate their actions from their identity. Admitting fault doesn't just mean they aired it, it means they are the error. This internal collapse is too threatening, so they make you the problem, projecting their shadow onto you, choosing denial over growth. Jung wrote, enlightenment comes not from envisioning light but from making the darkness conscious. These individuals take the opposite path, keeping their darkness buried by forcing you to carry it. Jung also realized that confronting such people gently often feels like starting a war you didn't intend. He identified ego defense mechanisms, mental strategies to shield the self from threatening truths, but some have turned these into a way of life. When you seek accountability from someone whose identity hinges on avoiding it, you're asking them to unravel their entire psychological framework. Jung's clinical notes reveal they don't perceive your pain as information but as an attack. Your call for understanding becomes their battle cry, your vulnerability their opportunity, your truth their enemy. These individuals have built such robust walls around their ego that they've lost access to their own empathy, unable to sit with your pain because they've never faced their own. Jung called this psychological rigidity and inability to adapt, grow, or change in response to new realities, leaving them trapped in the provisional life, forever dodging the deeper work of self-becoming. Jung's insights into emotional development explain why you keep expecting depth from those who remain surfacely volatile. He noted, when two personalities meet, it's like two chemicals interacting, but what happens when one is emotionally inert? His developmental psychology shows that some reach an emotional ceiling far short of honesty, offering excuses, silence, or distractions, but never genuine acknowledgement. The apology you never received reflects not your worth, but their limits, their emotional range exhausted before it reaches accountability. Jung found that true apologies require psychological integration, the ability to embrace both your light and shadow, your intentions and your harm, your love and your capacity to wound. Not everyone has achieved this integration. Some remain stuck in psychological inflation, their ego too fragile to handle challenges. To itself-image. Jung discovered that psychological patterns persist until made conscious. But what happens when someone is devoted to keeping theirs hidden? His concept of repetition, compulsion, describes the unconscious drive to repeat destructive patterns. Those who harm without remorse aren't making random errors, they're following a psychological blueprint that serves their needs. Jung's research shows they seek environments that reinforce their delusions, surrounding themselves with people who won't challenge them, creating psychological echo chambers that keep self-reflection at bay. Once they face that mirror, their illusion, harmlessness, of doing their best, of others being too sensitive, crumble. Jung wrote, "The greatest terror is to fully accept oneself." These individuals have built their lives around avoiding that terror, mastering unconscious competence and emotional avoidance, crafting frameworks that absolve them of responsibility the moment they cause harm. Here's the most liberating truth Jung uncovered about difficult people, one that will free you from the cycle of waiting, hoping, and exhausting yourself trying to force emotional maturity. You cannot make the unconscious conscious. You can't compel someone to see what they refuse to acknowledge or love them into maturity if they're committed to staying immature. In his final writings on relationships, Jung emphasized that the ultimate act of self-love is accepting that some will never offer what you need, not because you're unworthy, but because they lack the psychological capacity. Their refusal to apologize or acknowledge your pain reflects their developmental stage, not your value. Trying to extract accountability from the emotionally unavailable is like seeking water from a dry well. No amount of effort will produce what isn't there. Jung dedicated his career to teaching shadow integration, urging people to become whole by facing themselves fully, but he also recognized that this work is voluntary. No one can be forced into consciousness. Here's the final truth to liberate you from those who've hurt you and acted as if nothing happened. Jung said, "Clarity comes from looking within your heart. Those who look outward, dream. Those who look inward, awaken. Those who've harmed you remain in a dream, projecting their shadow, avoiding self-reflection, but you've been awake, seeking truth, accountability, healing, and growth in relationships with those who choose to stay asleep." Jung's profound insight is that your healing doesn't rely on their awakening. Your closure doesn't need their consciousness. Your peace doesn't require their permission. And your worth doesn't depend on their validation. They know exactly what they did, but lack the psychological tools to face it. Now you know what to do. Stop waiting for their evolution. Stop explaining your pain to those who benefit from ignoring it. Stop carrying the emotional weight of one-sided relationships. Jung noted, the greatest terror is to accept oneself completely, but he also found that the greatest freedom is accepting others' limitations, including their refusal to grow. When you stop trying to awaken the unconscious, you make room for relationships with those already awake, creating space for emotionally intelligent people to enter your life. The goal isn't to make everyone conscious, but to become conscious enough to protect your peace from those who refuse their inner work. That's the true shadow work, the true integration, the true freedom. Jung taught that what irritates us about others can reveal insights about ourselves. Those who've hurt you without remorse have shown you your strength, your worth, your capacity for healing. They've clarified what you won't accept, what you value, and that your peace is worth guarding. The gift within the wound is the realization that you deserve people who match your emotional maturity, who can face discomfort, confront their shadows, and grow with you. The apology you never got was about their limitations, not you. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You know who you are, someone who values truth, accountability, growth, healing, and authentic connection. Seek those who reflect that in return. Thank you for joining me in this deep dive. If this resonated, please share it with someone who might find it valuable.